There are winters in Wyoming that don't feel like weather. They feel like judgment. The kind that doesn't ask who you are or what you've done. It just arrives. And it waits to see what you're made of. Cole Harlan had been riding through that judgment for 3 days. 2 bullets in his revolver. A wound in his side that had stopped being painful and started being quiet, which was worse. He'd seen 3 men survive a gut shot in the mountains in winter. He remembered all 3 faces because there were only 3. And somewhere behind him, in a trading post that smelled like smoke and bad decisions, 3 men who were probably still arguing about whether he was dead. He wasn't dead, but he wasn't entirely sure that was an advantage yet. Shadow found the cabin, not Cole. Shadow. The horse had been moving through the storm for 2 hours with a half-conscious man on his back, making decisions that Cole's body was no longer capable of making, choosing paths through the white that Cole's eyes couldn't read anymore. That's the thing about Shadow. He always knew. The cabin appeared through the snow like something the mountain had been hiding on purpose. Low walls, frosted windows, a door that hadn't been opened in a long time. Cole fell more than dismounted. Shadow stood over him for a moment in the blizzard. Patient, present. Cole pulled himself inside, found a lantern, found oil, found the cold floor of a place where nobody had been warm in years. He pressed his coat against the wound and thought, if this is where it ends, at least it ends out of the wind. It didn't end there, because at midnight, the door opened. And Cole woke up pointing a gun he had 2 bullets in at 3 people who turned out to be a father and his 2 sons, looking for exactly what Cole had found, shelter. The older boy saw the blood first. The younger one saw the gun. And the father, a man who had clearly been through 3 days that made Cole's look manageable, looked at both of those things and said the only sentence that made sense. "We're not going to hurt you. We need help." Cole looked at him for a long moment. Then he lowered the gun. This isn't a story about a gunfighter saving a family. It's about a man with almost nothing left, deciding to spend what remained on people who weren't his problem. Cole Harlan had 2 bullets, a wound, and a horse. That was all. If you're new here, stay. The part most stories skip is about to begin. Subscribe if you're riding with us. Now, back to Wyoming, back to the cabin, back to the cold. Wyoming Territory, December 1879. Cole had been moving north for 11 days, not toward anything specific, away from something specific, the accumulation of noise that followed his name through towns and telegraph offices, and the conversations of men who needed a legend more than they needed the truth. The mountains were the opposite of all that. They didn't know his name. They didn't care. They applied the same pressure to everyone who tried to cross them in December, and the only credential they recognized was the ability to keep moving. Cole had been keeping moving, until 3 days ago. The trading post didn't have a name on the sign, just a number, 4, painted in faded red on a plank above the door. The kind of numbering system that made sense to whoever had established the route and to nobody else. Cole had stopped for ammunition. He had 7 rounds left, and the next settlement was a 2-day ride in good weather. In this weather, it was uncertain. He walked in, heard the conversation at the back table, understood immediately that he'd walked into something that was already in progress, and that his presence had changed the mathematics of it. He tried to walk back out. The man who shot him was nervous. That was the worst kind. Trained men shoot when the situation calls for it. Nervous men shoot when their fear tells them to. Fear has worse timing than training. The bullet caught Cole in the left side of his abdomen as he was through the door. Not centered. Low. A gut shot. Without a doctor, it was a long conversation with a bad ending. In the Wyoming mountains in December, the nearest doctor was 2 days south in good weather. This was not good weather. Cole rode. That was all he did. He pointed Shadow north and rode, and let the horse make the decisions that his body was no longer capable of making. Shadow made the right ones. He always did. His name was Elias Boone, 44 years old. His face was what Wyoming winters produce in a man who has worked alone for 2 decades. Not hardened, but worn into something specific, the way wood gets shaped by weather into forms that look intentional. He had the hands of someone who had been building and fixing things for 20 years, and who had been doing it alone most of that time. Not because he preferred it, but because that was what the land required. He'd built his farm 12 miles north of where they were sitting. 12 miles in summer was a morning's ride. In December, in this storm, with no horses, it was a different kind of distance entirely. The older son was Thomas, 16. He had his father's economy of motion. The way he sat, the way he moved, the absence of waste in everything his body did. He watched Cole the way his father watched Cole. Carefully, completely, without performing the watching. The younger one was Daniel, 15. He had something different, something that expressed itself as constant small movements, fingers on the table, weight shifting, eyes that went to the door and came back and went again. Not fear, something that fear was trying to contain. Daniel Boone wanted to go back. He'd been wanting to go back since the moment they'd left. Cole recognized both things. He'd been both of those boys at different points. Elias told the story the way men tell stories they've been living inside for 3 days. Not linearly, not from the beginning, but from the part that was still loudest. They have Margaret. That was the first sentence. Not who they were, not how many, not what they'd taken. Margaret first. Everything else was detail. Cole listened. The fire that Elias had managed to coax from the old stove was doing something to the temperature in the cabin that could charitably be called improvement. The wound in his side had gone from loud to persistent, which was his body's way of saying it was working on the problem but had not yet solved it. He listened until Elias was done. Then he asked 2 questions. How many men? 6, maybe 7. One of them doesn't come out much. I'm not sure about him. How long have they been there? 3 days. They came the night of the first big storm. Said they needed shelter. We let them in. Elias looked at the fire. That was the mistake. Cole thought about what not to say. There was a long list. None of it would have been useful. You didn't make a mistake, Cole said finally. You did what a man does when strangers need shelter in a storm. What happened after that is on them. Elias looked at him. Something in the father's expression shifted in the way things shift when someone says the true version of something you've been telling yourself the wrong version of for 3 days. Cole counted the numbers in his head. 7 men, 2 bullets. He didn't say what that math looked like out loud. Not yet. Before Cole moved another inch toward that farm, he needed to understand one thing. And what Elias told him next about those men, what they were, what they'd already done, almost made him tell the Boones he couldn't help. Almost. Cole slept for 6 hours. Not well. The wound had opinions about sleep. But the body takes what it needs when it understands that the alternative is not waking up, and Cole's body had been through enough to understand that. When he woke, Thomas was sitting against the wall across from him, awake, watching the door. You don't have to do that, Cole said. I know, Thomas said. Then why? Thomas looked at him. Because somebody has to. Cole looked at the boy for a moment. 16 years old, 3 days from home, his mother held by men who had already demonstrated what they were capable of, and his first instinct in a cabin full of problems was to watch the door. Fair enough, Cole said. They weren't outlaws in the wanted poster sense. Cole had seen that type and they were manageable. Men running from something specific, which meant they had something to lose. These were different. Men who'd learned early that the frontier rewarded taking, and who'd never found a reason to become anything else. Ex-trappers, failed miners, men who'd been on the wrong side of cattle wars and decided the lesson was to stop picking sides and start moving through the land taking what it offered. The cold didn't make them cautious. That was the problem. Men who've already made their peace with dying are comfortable in ways that make them very hard to negotiate with. Cole had 2 rounds in his revolver. That was the number he kept coming back to. He'd been in worse mathematics. He'd also been in better. 2 rounds was not enough to solve this problem the way he was used to solving it, which meant the problem needed to be solved differently. "Is there anywhere within a day's walk where we could get weapons?" Cole asked Elias. Elias thought about that. Then he said, "Harker's, a trading post, 4 miles west. Different from the one I came through." "Yes, Harker's been there 30 years. He's not involved in any of this." "Does he have anything worth having?" Elias was quiet for a moment. "He has old things, a Sharps, some shotguns. Could be dynamite from the mining survey 3 years ago. Surveyors came through chasing the Black Hills gold, left the dynamite behind and a scar in the hillside. Harker kept it." "Could be," Cole said. "Could be," Elias confirmed. That was enough. Harker's trading post looked like it had been built by someone who understood that permanence required looking exactly like the land around it. Low, wide, dark wood gone gray from decades of weather. Rifles hung inside on pegs put there so long ago the wood had grown around them slightly. The smell of smoke and wet leather and old metal that belongs to places where things have been kept for years without apology. Harker himself was 70, maybe more. Old in the way that stops being remarkable and becomes a statement. About terms, about stubbornness, about the specific argument a man makes with a territory when he refuses to leave it for 40 years. He looked at Cole, at the wound, at Elias and the 2 boys. He didn't ask any questions. "What do you need?" he said. Not a question, a category request. The Sharps rifle was from 1874, 5 years old, which in that post felt recent. It was the same model that had been used to bring down the great buffalo herds across the plains through the 1870s. A weapon built for distance and stopping power, now sitting on a peg in a Wyoming trading post waiting for a different kind of work. Harker had 2 boxes of cartridges for it, found after 4 minutes of looking in places that didn't seem like they would contain cartridges. The shotgun was older. Harker wasn't sure how old. "Fires," he said. "I tested it last spring." That was the entire endorsement. The dynamite was in a crate in the back that Harker opened with the specific, unhurried care of a man who has been next to something unstable long enough to stop being afraid of it, but not long enough to stop being respectful. 4 sticks. Harker's assessment. Probably. In Wyoming in December, probably was a valid metric. The problem was money. Cole had some, not enough for all of it. Elias had less than Cole. The boys had nothing except what they were carrying, which was the practical inventory of people who had left a house in a hurry in the dark with a blizzard coming. Cole watched Elias go through his coat pockets, watched him find the total and understand it was short, and stand there with that understanding on his face for a moment. Then Elias reached into the inside pocket, brought out a watch. Gold case, worn chain. The gold warm-colored from decades of daily handling. The metal had the feel of something that belongs to a person, rather than something a person simply owns. "My grandfather's," Elias said. He set it on the counter without looking at it again. "Without my family, this doesn't mean anything." Harker looked at the watch. He didn't pick it up. He looked at it the way people look at things being offered at a price the seller shouldn't have to pay. Then he looked at Elias. Then he pushed the watch back across the counter. "Take what you need," Harker said. "Settle it when you can." Elias looked at the old man. "I don't know when that would be." "Neither do I," Harker said. "That's not what I asked." Thomas, standing behind his father, was watching Harker with the expression of someone filing something away permanently. On the walk back from Harker's, Cole explained what he was thinking. Not a plan exactly. The conditions didn't allow for plans. The storm was building again. The light was going. They had what they had, and the window between now and Margaret Boone spending another night in that house was closing. He explained it like a man explaining terrain. What was there, what wasn't, what the margin was. Daniel, the younger one, listened and then said, "You're telling us it might not work?" "Yes," Cole said. "Then why are we doing it?" Cole looked at him, at the 15-year-old with the thing that fear was trying to contain. "Because nobody else is coming," Cole said. "That's the only reason that matters out here." Daniel looked at the snow, then he picked up the sharps and kept walking. Cole thought about what waited at the farm. 7 men, maybe 6, with one he hadn't been able to confirm, who'd been inside for 3 days and had every reason to stay comfortable. They had shelter, they had food. They had no reason to believe anyone was coming. Comfort made men slow. Cole was counting on that. What he'd told Elias, standing in the snow outside Harker's with the dynamite in the bag and the sharps over Thomas's shoulder, was this: "We don't win this fight. We end it." Elias had looked at him. "Those are the same thing," Elias said. "No," Cole said. "Winning takes time. Ending takes one right moment. We're looking for the moment." He looked at Thomas, then at Daniel. "There's a woman in that house who's been waiting 3 days for the right moment too," Cole said. "She'll know it when it arrives. Trust her to do her part." Here's the thing about violence in the cold. Everything slows. Not the bodies. The bodies move the same. What slows is the margin. The space between what goes right and what goes wrong gets smaller when the temperature drops, when fingers are stiff, when breath clouds in front of your face and blocks the sightline for half a second at exactly the wrong moment. Cole had been in cold confrontations before. He knew this. He'd planned for it as much as planning was possible. 2 rounds in the revolver, the sharps for Thomas, the dynamite for Daniel, and one woman inside who didn't know they were coming, but who had been keeping herself ready anyway. That was everything they had. The farm appeared through the storm the way Elias had described it. Low, solid, built by someone who understood that permanence was the point. The kind of structure that argues with the weather and eventually wins. Smoke from the chimney, light in one window. The remains of the horses in the snow near the barn. The gang had ridden in, but those horses weren't going to carry anyone out. Cole made sure Elias and the boys didn't look at them for long. 2 men outside, one at the door, one making a slow circle around the barn. The pattern of someone who'd been assigned the perimeter and had been at it long enough to stop thinking about it. The men who stopped thinking were the problem. They were also the opportunity. Cole went left, Thomas went right with the sharps. Elias and Daniel held at the tree line with the one instruction that mattered: "Not until you hear me." The man at the barn door never heard Cole coming. Not because Cole was exceptional, because a Wyoming storm is loud in a way that isn't one sound. It's everything at once: wind and snow and the deep creak of frozen wood. And a man who has been standing in it for an hour has already made his peace with not hearing things approach. It was over before it could become a question. The second man, circling the barn, caught something in his peripheral vision, turned, started to call out. The sharps answered from the tree line. Thomas's hands had inherited something from 16 years of watching his father work. That economy of motion, that absence of wasted movement. The shot was clean. It was the kind of clean that isn't luck. Cole gave them 5 seconds. Enough time for the shot to register inside. Not enough time for anyone to organize around it. Then he moved to the door. What followed at the Boone farm in the next 8 minutes was not clean. It wasn't choreographed. It was desperate men with limited ammunition and complete knowledge of the stakes, moving through a space they couldn't afford to fail in. The door came open wrong. The first man through had already committed to the angle. He fired before Cole could account for it. The shot hit the frame. Cole fired back. 1 bullet, 1 left in the cylinder. Inside, 3 men, 1 lantern. Smoke and heat from a fire that had been burning for 3 days. The smell of people who'd been comfortable somewhere they had no right to be. And in the corner, a woman. She had positioned herself with her back to the wall and her face toward the room. Not cowering, watching. She'd been doing exactly that for 3 days. waiting for the moment she'd know when it came. Margaret Boone. She looked at the door when it opened. She looked at Cole. She said her husband's name once, not as a question. The leader had stayed inside. Cole had expected that. Not courage, calculation. The man understood that whoever was coming had come for the house, and Margaret was the only leverage he had left. Cole could hear him moving to her position across the room, could hear the shift in his breathing, the specific sound of a man deciding he still had something to bargain with. "Your men outside are gone," Cole said through the smoke. "The ones in the barn are about to have a different problem. Walk out of this room and walk south. That's the only offer." "I walk out of here," the voice came back, "and I've got nothing between me and that cold." "Yes," Cole said, "that's the offer." A long silence, then movement, the man putting Margaret between himself and the door. At the tree line, Daniel had the dynamite. Cole had told him, "The barn, drive them out the back, not through the roof." The goal was to move them, into the open, into the storm, away from shelter. The cold would do the rest. Cole had been clear about that. The cold was more efficient than he was. Daniel was 15 years old and had been wanting to go back for 3 days. His hands didn't shake. The explosion moved the last 2 men from the barn exactly the way Cole had mapped it. Out the back, into the open, into the Wyoming night with no shelter, no horses, and a temperature that didn't negotiate. The cold finished what the night started. Cole understood this and didn't pursue. That left the leader, one man, one bullet, and the woman he was using as a wall. The man spoke, his voice measured, working through the options out loud, the tone of someone who still believed there was a version of this where he walked away intact. Margaret heard something different in it. She'd been listening to that voice for 3 days. She knew the exact moment it ran out of moves. She dropped, fast, completely. No hesitation, not a flinch, not a half measure. 3 days of waiting converted into one single motion, her body already decided before her mind finished the thought. She went flat to the floor and didn't stop until she was there. The shot was already leaving the barrel. The room was quiet except for the storm outside and the fire that had been burning for 3 days, and Margaret Boone on the floor, getting to her feet with the expression of someone returning from somewhere very far away. Elias came through the door 30 seconds later. He stopped when he saw his wife. That moment, the specific quality of it, the two of them in the firelight of their own house after 3 days, is not something that belongs in a narration. Some things aren't for describing. Thomas stood in the doorway and didn't come in. Daniel sat down in the snow outside and put his face in his hands and stayed there for a while. Cole walked past both of them to where Shadow was tied at the tree line. He checked the horse, checked the wound in his side with his hand. Still bad. Better than the alternative. He stood in the snow for a while, listening to the storm think about quieting down. In the Old West, the stories that traveled were the simple ones. Cole Harlan faced 7 men. Cole Harlan won. That's the kind of story that fits in a sentence and travels well in saloons. What happened at the Boone farm in December 1879 was harder to summarize. A man with 2 bullets and a wound went into a blizzard with a father and 2 boys and some 3-year-old dynamite and brought a woman home from something she shouldn't have survived. It wasn't enough bullets. It wasn't enough men. It wasn't the right conditions. It worked anyway. Not because of the legend, because a 15-year-old didn't let his hands shake, because a 16-year-old watched the door he didn't have to watch, because a woman in the corner of her own house had been building toward one moment for 3 days and executed it without hesitation when the moment came. Cole was the match. They were the fire. He left before dawn. The storm had reduced itself to something manageable, not finished, but no longer in charge. The sky above the mountains had the dark blue that comes before the sun finds the peaks. Cole saddled Shadow in the barn. He didn't go back inside to say anything. He'd tried once the night before, and Elias had looked at him with the expression of a man who understood that whatever words existed for what had happened didn't belong to this moment. They'd sat by the fire instead. Elias and Margaret, Thomas and Daniel. Cole on the far side, eating something Margaret had made from what was in the kitchen. Nobody said much. That was the right amount. Thomas came to the barn while Cole was saddling Shadow. He stood in the door for a moment. Then he walked in and helped with the girth strap without being asked. The way someone helps who understands horses and understands that help offered without announcement is better than help offered with it. When they were done, he stood back. "Where do you go?" Thomas said. "South," Cole said. "Eventually." "Is it better down there?" Cole thought about that honestly. "Different," he said. Thomas looked at Shadow. "You could stay until the wound heals more." "It'll heal on the road," Cole said. "How do you know?" Cole looked at the boy, 16, 3 days in the worst version of things, standing in a barn asking the right questions. "Because it always has," Cole said. "That's the only evidence I have, but it's consistent." Thomas almost smiled. "Take care of your brother," Cole said. "He has good instincts. He just needs someone to run a little ahead of them." Thomas nodded. Cole walked Shadow out into the pre-dawn dark. Shadow moved at a walk through the snow. Cole let him set the pace. The horse knew what the wound meant for the next few days better than Cole did. Behind him, the Boone farm disappeared into the white. The light was coming now. That slow Wyoming winter sunrise that doesn't arrive so much as accumulate. The darkness becoming gray, becoming something that might eventually be morning. Cole thought about the watch Elias hadn't had to spend. About an old man in a trading post who'd said, "Settle it when you can," and had meant it. About a woman who dropped the instant the moment arrived because 3 days of waiting had built something in her that didn't require a signal. The West buried men who ran out of luck. Sometimes it also produced people like this, a family in the mountains who had been through something they shouldn't have survived and who were sitting by a fire right now in their own house, together, intact. That was something. Shadow walked south. The mountains did what they always did. They stayed. The legend of Cole Harlan traveled to a lot of places. Banks in Missouri, saloons in Colorado, fields in Texas, streets in Oklahoma. It didn't travel easily to the Wyoming mountains, not because nothing happened there, but because the people it happened with weren't the kind who told stories in saloons. Elias Boone told it once, years later, to a man passing through who asked about the farm and the scar on the barn door. He kept it short. A man came through in December, bad winter. He was hurt. We helped him. He helped us back. "Cole Harlan?" the man asked. Elias looked at him. "He didn't tell us his name," Elias said, which was true. Cole had never said it. Cole Harlan rode south out of Wyoming with a wound that was closing slowly and 2 empty cylinders in a revolver that had spent everything it had. Shadow picked the path. The mountains got smaller behind them. Somewhere north of the Colorado line, Cole stopped on a ridge and looked back at the wide expanse of the territory he'd just crossed. Nothing moved in it. Nothing visible. Just the mountains. Just the cold. Just the silence of a place that doesn't require anything of anyone except honesty about what it is. Cole had always respected that. He turned Shadow south. Edmund Cross was still free. Cole had been running from the name for 11 days. He was going to have to stop running and start riding toward it soon. But the wound was closing, and that, for now, was enough. That's everything for tonight. If Wyoming felt cold and the cabin felt real, if Harker pushing that watch back across the counter meant something to you, then you already know what this channel is. Thomas Boone was 16 years old, and he watched a door he didn't have to watch. Tell me in the comments, what does a man like that become? One word. I want to see what you think. Subscribe, stay for the next one, and tell me where you're watching from tonight. Cole rode south. The story goes everywhere. See you on the next road.